Convert fractions to decimals. Eduardo's patient has a total of 3 bed sores. Of those, one of them is considered stage 2. Use a decimal to determine the proportion of stage 2 bed sores. So for this problem, we're going to need to first find the fraction of bed sores that are stage 2. Then we're going to look at that fraction bar as it represents actually division. And then to convert a fraction to a decimal, we divide. And if a decimal repeats, we will use a bar to represent this. So let's go back to this problem. So we have 1 of 3 bed sores that is considered stage 2. So we would write this as 1/3. Now this fraction sign with that bar is actually going to show us how we divide. So we actually will go 1 divided by 3 to give us our decimal number. So let's use this. So we notice that 3 cannot go into 1 because 3 is much larger than 1. So we're going to need to add a 0. And so what we're going to do is we're going to place a decimal right here and add a 0. So now 3 can go into what is shown now is 10 3 times. So 3 times 3 then is equal to 9. So then we're going to subtract. So we go 10 minus 9, which is equal to 1. And again, when we go back, if you didn't, what we would do here is we'll borrow from the 1s, place a 0 there, carry that 1 over here. Now we have 10 minus 9, which is equal to 1. And because now we're left at 1, 3 can't go into 1, so we're going to need to add another 0 here and bring that down. Now we're left with 10 here, so 3 can go into 10 3 times. So 3 times 3 is equal to 9. Then 10 minus 9 is equal to 1. 3 can't go into 1, but so we'll bring a 0 down. Now 3 can go into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is equal to 9. We'll subtract. This is equal to 1. So as you can see that this is going to be a continuous cycle to get the 3's on the top, and we have this remainder of 1 down below. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our number. So we see the decimal here. We're going to bring that straight up to right there. So 1 divided by 3 is equal to 0.333. And the 3's will continue. So to represent a decimal that repeats, we're going to use a bar. So 1 divided by 3 is equal to 0.3 bar. Because this shows that this 3 will continue to repeat. So this is our answer. So let's look at another example. Francisca was in a massive car crash that has placed her in 2 full late casts. While she was confined to bed rest, she developed 5 original bed sores. However, now that she's taking care to move around more, 2 of the bed sores have healed. Use a decimal to indicate the ratio of bed sores that have healed. So for this, we're going to have to create a fraction here. So for those that have healed, it's 2 out of 5. So we would write 2/5. This fraction bar shows us division, so 2 divided by 5. So let's go ahead and do this division problem. So we have 2 that goes in the division symbol and then the 5 on the left of it. So now 5 can't go into 2, so we're going to need to add a 0 right there, and we'll put the decimal right there. So now 5 can go into 20, and it can go into 24 times, because 5 times 4 is equal to 20. So we would write that right here, and we would subtract, and we're left with 0 as a remainder. So then we go back to our problem, and we bring up that decimal to right here. So 5 can go into 2.4 times. So to use a decimal to indicate the ratio of bed sores that have healed would be equal to 0.4. And this is our final answer. So let's look at one more example. Gabriella's patient has been admitted to a hospital with a stage 4 bed sore. The total measurement for the bed sore is 11 centimeters. However, 8 centimeters of the bed sore is severely infected. Determine the proportion of infection using a decimal. So for this, we're going to use another fraction first. So we have an 8 centimeters out of 11 that's severely infected. So we would write that down. 8 over 11. Now, this really is 8 divided by 11. And we're asked to find what this decimal is. So we would go ahead, we'd put the 11 with the 8 inside the division symbol. So 11 can go into 8, but if we add a 0, that 0.0, now 11 can go into 87 times. So 11 times 7 is equal to 77. So now we would subtract. So this 8 becomes a 7 because we need to borrow. So now the 0 becomes a 10. So 10 minus 7 is equal to 3. 7 minus 7 is 0. So now 11 can't go into 3. So we're going to need to go ahead and bring down another 0. So now 11 can go into 30 2 times. So 11 times 2 is equal to 22. Then we would subtract. So this 3 becomes a 2. This becomes a 1. So 10 minus 2 is equal to 8. 2 minus 2 is 0. So we're left with 8. So now we're going to add a 0, bring that one down, and now we're left with 80. And we're going to look back and notice that this right here was what we kind of started with. So 11 kind of goes into, we should know that 11 goes into 80 now 7 times again. We're going to be left with 11 times 7, which is 77. We'll subtract, we get 3 again. And then we bring down another 0. So we bring that 0, left with 30. We know 11 can go into 30 2 times. And again, this cycle will continue to repeat. So we're going to go back to our problem, bring up this decimal right here. And because we know that if we go 11 times 2, which is equal to 22, it's the same as this step. So we know we are left with 8, and we're going to begin the cycle all over again. So we can just stop here and notice that this 0.72, in particular the 72, is going to be continued to be repeated. So our answer would be 0.72, and we're going to put a bar on the top to indicate that these two numbers are going to be repeated for infinity. So this is our final answer that we would write down.